Hello, in this video I'd like to talk about HMO versus single let property. I'm going to talk about exactly what they are and the pros and cons of each. So my name's Simon Zutshi. I'm the author of Property Magic, the Amazon property #1 bestseller. I'm the founder of the Property Investors Network, and I've been investing in property since 1995. I have both HMOs and single let properties. In fact, my very first rental property was a student HMO back in 1998. So I think they're both great, and there are definitely pros and cons for both of them. So let's look at those first. So let's think about a single let property. That's where you have a house or an apartment that you let out to one tenant. Now that one tenant could be a family, could be an individual, and generally they're less work than an HMO because once the contract's in place, you let the tenant to pretty much get on with it. Now as a landlord, you're responsible for looking after the property, make sure everything works properly, but the tenant, they pay for all of the bills. They pay their own council tax, they pay their gas, their electric, their broadband internet, their TV license, that's all their responsibility. All you need to look after is the insurance for the building, and obviously you always need to make sure you have proper landlord insurance that not only covers the building and the contents, but also gives you public liability insurance just in case an accident happens in the property. You need to make sure you're covered for that. Now, you can manage that property yourself. It doesn't take a lot of time. But when I first started investing in property, I was absolutely managing it all on myself because I didn't really want to pay a letting agent. However, if you're not local to the property, it might be worth getting a letting agent looking after the property for you. So if there are any issues, you're not the person who gets a call at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday when the tenant's lost their keys. It's the letting agent deals with all of that for you. Now, that does affect your cash flow. And typically a single let property can make £100 or a couple of £100 profit. It's about a 5 to 7% return on investment. So it's better than leaving the money in the bank, and obviously you get the long-term capital growth as well. Let's talk now about HMOs. So a house of multiple occupation. And normally it's a larger house or a larger apartment where you might have ideally somewhere between 4 and 6 people sharing that property. Now they each have their own individual room. Sometimes they might share a bathroom, or some of the rooms might be en suite, which means they have their own shower, hand basin and toilet, and you can get a higher rent for an ensuite room. They'll always share a kitchen, and they might even have a communal living room. Now, who would want to live in an HMO? Well, often students live together in a group when they're studying at university, and people who've been students and moved on then got great jobs as an architect, a solicitor, accountant, what we call young professionals, they also like living in these properties. You see, if someone has to move to a new city to get a job and they don't really know anyone there, they can move into an HMO, they have an instant social life, living with people who are like them, people to go to the pub with, and also it's more cost effective living in an HMO than it is living on your own in a studio or an apartment because you'd have to pay for the bills. You see, in an HMO, the landlord generally covers the cost of the bills. So there's the council tax, the gas, the electric, the TV license, the broadband internet. By the way, broadband internet is very, very important to the people who live in this kind of house. Very important you make sure you get the best possible internet you can, not the cheapest. That's not a good place to cut costs. Now, again, as a landlord, you need to make sure you have the right insurance in place, and you might decide to manage the property yourself. It is definitely more work than a single let property just because of the nature of having more tenants. But in a way, it's a bit like having 4 or 5 single let properties all in the same road, because when you go to the HMO, you've got 4 or 5 tenants you can deal with at the same time. Now, you can get a letting agent look after the property for you. The challenge is, historically, many letting agents, because they're more work, because they don't understand them, haven't wanted to do HMO management, but there are more and more specialist companies coming out now who can help manage HMOs for you. The reason people do HMOs is because there's significantly higher cash flow and return on investment than they might get on a single let property. So a good HMO should make you about £1,000 a month profit. That's after all of the expenses, the mortgage, the insurance, the management, everything. If an HMO made less than £500, personally, I wouldn't buy it. It's not worth the hassle, but they can make as much as £1,500, even £2,000 a month. But £1,000 a month is a pretty good average for a 6-bedroom HMO. That also means the return on investment is much better than a single let property, which, as I said before, was maybe 5 to 7% return on investment. An HMO should be 15 to 20% or even more. So you're making your money work harder, you're getting better cash flow, and that's why many people favour doing HMO properties. Some people say you should maybe buy a single let first to make sure you like property before you do HMOs. I can see the logic in that. However, if you get a bit more education and learn how to do an HMO straight away, why on earth wouldn't you want to get your money working harder for you as soon as you possibly can? So if it comes to HMO versus single lets, my vote would always be for HMOs. I do hope this video has been useful for you. Please do put some comments below. We've got a lot more videos about HMO on this channel, so subscribe to the channel if you want. And I encourage you to always invest with knowledge, invest with skill. Thanks for watching.